Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Plugging Along. What with Twitch's issues this last week, I am hosting on my personal channel, or streaming to my personal channel and hosting over on Lotro Stream. So, welcome. If this is your first time here, that's because I'm usually over there. With that note, hello from outside the Prancing Pony. Welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we added some final changes to version 1.0.1 of the Hunter Deadly Decoy plugin, and we shipped it out the door. And since we spent the last 6 weeks developing the Hunter Deadly Decoy plugin, I thought it was time to switch focus a little bit onto some existing plugins that need a little love and attention. So, as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. I do have a couple of plugins in mind, but I'm happy to be derailed. So, let me go ahead and pull something up here. And if you are in chat, feel free to say hello, feel free to lurk. Either one is fine. Okay, we are here. Let me go ahead and switch over. There we go. And first of all, there is a bug reported. Plugins/plugins manager. There is a bug reported with the Opaque Quest Tracker. The Opaque Quest Tracker was something we looked at a few months ago. And it's just a way to put an opaque space behind your quest area so that it's a little bit easier to read your quest text on highly contrasted areas. So let's add some text over there, maybe add these troll shaws there. And we could see how, without Opaque Quest Tracker, depending on the background, that could be really difficult to read that text. Cool, okay. We made the Opaque Quest Tracker, and that works great. But a user reported a problem where the save file got mangled in some way, and it made the plugin unusable. Oh, thanks, Moobot, via Little Red Hood. Yes, do get ready for Gundabad. If you play Lord of the Rings Online, or if you ever have or ever want to, do use the code LotroQuests2021 to unlock a bunch of cool stuff. It'll stay with your account permanently, whether or not you are an active player. Okay, so what happened? What went wrong? Let me pull up an Explorer window here, and we'll go to our documents, Lord of the Rings Online, and I'm going to go look at the plugin data for this Opaque Quest Tracker. What is it supposed to look like when it's behaving well? All right, let me pull over this text window. I use Sublime Text, but whatever text editor you use is fine. Okay, so what's going on here? We have a variety of things being stored in decimal format. I'm going to actually separate them out a little bit. So we have the height and width. We have the left and the top. We have red, green, and blue. And we have the opacity. Now, yes. Exo says in the Lotro stream chat that the blank dark square is oddly fitting as a plugin icon. Yeah, I looked at it and I said, well, that's perfect. I don't need an icon because that's great. Feel free to join us over in the personal channel, B4and423.62. There's a link somewhere around you. Or I will see you in the Lotro stream chat as well. Okay, so if you like having your save file data organized in a particular way, then I have bad news for you. You can't. This is a random order. Sometimes it will change every time you save the file. There's no guarantee of any particular ordering. So we can mess with it all we want to here. Oops. In fact, if I save this and then unload, we can see not only did it overwrite, which is fine, but it also reordered everything. Let's go ahead and replace it with what I just had. Load and exit, and it's reordered again. So height and then opacity and top and width, no order whatsoever. And that's fine, but it does mean if we want to look at it a specific way, it's very temporary. Okay, so what's going on here? These are decimal values representing a percentage of the screen resolution at the time that they were saved. And there are two main schools of thought, I think, for how to save position and size on the screen. The first is absolute pixels. I am 30 pixels from the left and 100 pixels from the top. And the other is I am percentages. I am 10% of the way across the screen. I am 5% of the way down. I am 30% of the screen wide. Either of those can work, but the percentage-wise might produce a little bit more predictable results when you're changing screen resolutions. If the screen resolution gets twice as wide, your plugin can be twice as wide as it was, taking it the same, more or less the same physical footprint on the screen. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. Doing it with decimals does mean you have to be careful about the several issues that crop up for saving decimal values into a plugin data file. We've already talked about those on previous streams, but we can always revisit that if necessary. But it brings up the question of, is the radix point a decimal or a comma, and how will this be parsed by Lua on the way in? So right now, when it is working properly, Opaque Quest Tracker is saving these values as percentages, as decimal values, in quotes. And that's great. But I got a save file from someone who was having a problem. Let's go ahead and load that up now. Their save file looked like this. And let me go ahead and both separate it out and go ahead and reorder it so it looks the same. Opacity, red, green, and blue. We're in the right one on the other one. Okay. So this is what it looked like. Now, red, green, and blue, those look fine. Locked is fine. Opacity is fine. But somehow the height, width, left, and top look suspiciously like pixel values, which is not good because the plugin is going to interpret them as percentages. Now, what does that mean in practice? Well, it means that the opaque window thinks it's going to take up 3.5 times the width of the screen and 4.5 times the height, and the left position will be so far off the screen it doesn't even merit thinking about. It'll be 1,400 times the width of the screen to the right, and 287 times yeah, it's a mess. Or maybe that's 300 times the width wide, and the numbers are just silly big when you start multiplying them out, because this height is going to be multiplied by my 1080, this is going to be multiplied by my 1920. So we're going to get number of pixels wide equals 858,000 and 370,000 high. That's not right, obviously. And same thing, how many pixels away from the left edge is it going to be? It's going to be 2.8 million pixels away from the edge, which is too many. So, Exo says, I see, so just keep buying and adding monitors until it's visible again. Yes, that is the correct solution, but in the meantime, I figured let's go ahead and let's add some code to the plugin that says, hey, if I got something that's bigger than 1, in the range of a plausible monitor resolution, let's rescale it down. Let's assume something went wrong when writing it out, or maybe someone was manually editing the file, and let's fix it, and let's see if that's better. Because this is, I'm not even sure the windowing system knows what to do with numbers that big, and even if it does, that just, I mean, the amount of memory it takes to color in a background of that size, assuming your windowing system needs to keeps a byte for every pixel, how big is that window? That's 343 times 1080 times 447 times 920. So even if that were 1 byte per pixel in there, that's still what? Hundreds, thousands, millions, billions. So 3 gigs for that one window. I hope the windowing system just gives up and says, you're too big, I am not going to draw you. Okay, so let's see if we can do something about that. Now there's two possible things we can do. First is we should have a maximum size of the window. The window should not be able to get bigger than the screen. I'm not sure it should be able to get even near that size, but we'll start that. So issue 1, the window shouldn't get bigger than the monitor. So if opaque when height is bigger than screen height, then opaque when height equals screen height. Something like that. This is just some pseudocode just to capture some ideas. And then of course the same for width. Now, the second thing is once that's happened, we should make sure the window is on screen. Now I think we already do that. I think the problem here was that that window was so ridiculously big that the windowing manager should have rightfully refused to draw it at all. Because I do believe we have a function that says make sure we're on the screen. Okay, so let's start with this and possibly go into if the value in the file is bigger than 1, try dividing by the current screen size and see if it's a reasonable size. You know, bigger than 50 pixels, smaller than, I don't know, half the size of the screen. So if we do that, if we divide out by the size of the screen and get a reasonable range, let's just do that and call it good, right? And by definition, this little check would fall into this check. So we could even do this first. I should probably do that first. So first of all, try to rescale if it makes sense to do that. And then second, double check that we're not ridiculously big. Now the third question hanging in my head is, if the window is the same size as the screen, can we still resize it? That is, if it's so big, it's underneath all the other components, is it going to be possible to contract it down? Or should we add a restore to defaults button? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, we should do that, because that's incredibly frustrating to be looking at a plugin and you think it's loading and it's just not working, right? And you really just want a reset button somewhere. And so the answer to that is definitely yes, and I'd like to do that today. Okay, well, let's charge it. Oh, Exo, I saw someone on one of the Lotro Discords recommending the auras, and I was like, oh, that's cool. That's you, isn't it? Or not the person recommending, but that's your plugin. And I think it is cool that other people are recognizing that it looks neat. Ah, thanks, Moobot. Yes, Gundabad. You know, it doesn't hurt if it's a friend or someone who is intimately involved with the design and construction. Like, it's really cool when people are like, yes, this thing is awesome, even if, you know, they're bribed. As long as they mean it. Okay, so I'm going to keep this as a reminder to me of what can go wrong. I'm just going to slide it on off the screen here. And this will be the working folder here. Okay, actually, I'll slide that off as well. Let's go ahead and actually open up one of the plugin files, though. So, Opaque Quest Tracker is in Cube Plugins. It's me. And then, within that, we're going to go ahead and open opaquequesttracker.lua. Oh, Exo says, old Kinmei who randomly came across it in this case. Well, that's even better because it's not like you were like, hey, go tell people about this. All right, so we are in the Opaque Quest Tracker. Now, I don't exactly remember how this works. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and see if there's a main function. There's a main function. Awesome. What's the first thing we do in main? We call a function called load settings. That seems like a really promising place to fix how the settings are being loaded. Let's go over there and see what we have. Okay, so we have a couple of things. We have a default settings, and here's a great place where we can see what these are supposed to look like. Decimal values, definitely not 700. And we have a function called load settings. So the first thing we do is grab details from the file name. And in this case, we're loading from the character-specific file. And there's a feature in Opaque Quest Tracker where you can also just save an, I want to say account-wide? An account-wide default. If you always have the quest tracker in the same way, if you always use the UI layout file in the same way, you don't need to do this for every character. You just position the window once and save it as the default. But you can override it for specific characters. Totally fine. Okay, so we try to load personal, then we check for the global, and if we found something good, we need to go ahead and update each one of those decimal values with the euro normalize function, which is going to replace any commas with periods before we hand them off to Lua to be parsed. Let's take a look at that. So in the case that we are protecting against, we have a radix point of a comma, so a European 1.5 would be 1,5. We want to replace that with a period, because then we're going to pass it to the string.gsub, which expects a period regardless of your locale, unless it doesn't. And the is_euro format is going to be checking that for us. It's going to say, well, what does happen if we say to_number on 1,000? It's either going to come out as 1 or 1,000, right? Yeah, probably. Cool. Oh, no. Yes, okay. So is_euro format, does that equal 1? Neat. If it doesn't equal 1, then there we go. So these have all been processed. At this point, they should be less than 0. This is not a bad place to stick what we want to do. We could even create another function, fix missaved settings. And that way we'll keep our load settings function a little bit cleaner. Okay, so we have settings, and we know the specific ones we're worried about are left, top, width, and height. The other ones, I think it's not going to hurt us if we don't correct them. So for right now, we'll just ignore them. So we want to fix width, height, left, and top if they are pixels instead of percentages. All right. Basic logic for width and height. Try to rescale. Use if greater than 50 and less than 1/2 screen. I'll just do less than the whole, less than screen width / height. And then, do I have a thought for the left and the top? Yeah, not really. For left and top, try to rescale. Use if within, greater than 0 and less than screen width height. I think that's fine because it's completely reasonable for someone to just slide the window all the way into the corner. What shouldn't happen is it shouldn't be off the screen, but we have code to fix that. In fact, we can see that in action. If we're dragging the window around, we can see that we cannot drag it off the edge of the screen. It stops right there. So we shouldn't be able to get into a state where you can save a position that is off the screen. Okay. So if, and we're going to do this for each of the 4. So we know settings.opaque win.width. We'll just start with that. If that is greater than 1, then do something. What is that going to look like? All right. Try to rescale. Now, the first thing I'm thinking is I don't know the current size of the screen, but I'm confident that we get that somewhere on this page. So, display. There we go. Now, if I didn't already have that here, what would I do? Well, I would go to the API documentation, of course. So opening up handy dandy browser window, I would come into Lotro API documentation. This is downloadable from online. So this is a local copy. And then turbine.ui.display. And it has the methods get height, get width, or combine them together into get size. And you can also do the same thing for where the mouse is. Get the X and the Y coordinates, or just both of them in one call together. Sweet. So we want to get size. And that's going to return a tuple of two numbers, horizontal and then vertical. Excellent. Width and then height. So there we go. Let's go ahead and get those once up here. And then we'll call this local possible width equals, equals that width divided by the display width. So, for example, what if we had, sorry, I've lost track of there it is. Okay. If the height was stored as 343, then this is going to be 343 divided by, let's pretend it's 1920. It's just a little under because I'm in winded mode. And what we should expect is that 343 divided by 1920 is going to be about 0.17. We'll just cut it off right there, 0.18. And I'll use the tilde to represent about. Okay, so that's what we're expecting. So the possible width is going to be this divided by that. Okay, and you know that 50 is troubling me because it's in pixels and we're in percentages. How much do I care about minimum sizes? What if someone wants to have it really small? Do I care about that now? I don't know. Let's find out. That's delightful. So we have a minimum width. We don't have a minimum height. That seems like a bug. Let's make a note here. Seems like there's a minimum width, but no minimum height. Fix that. And the other thing I noticed is if you're resizing from the left, if you're resizing from the left and you get too small, it starts treating it like a drag operation from within the window. And I think that is fantastically counterintuitive. Shrinking window from left turns into drag once minimum width is hit. And edge cases like that are, they just creep in, and that's okay. There's nothing breaking about that right there. And in fact, what I would the use case I was probably doing was getting it big, moving it over to the right side of the screen, and then shrinking it. So right now, a move, this just appears to be the minimum width, but it's really both is the minimum width and trying to drag it off, which we also don't allow. And I probably just completely missed that was a thing. But now that we know about it, that's okay. And in fact, all of this should go into the to-do file. So version 1.0.2 features. Oh, haha, no. Let's just call it today. And in the README, we can go ahead and say version 1.0.2 just in case we make something worth shipping today. Okay. So 50 pixels. Well, let's pause, put a pin in it, and let's go look at what's going on with that minimum width. Is that something I wrote, or is that just some emergent behavior from something else? So where is that going to be? Well, let's come back down here. We have, no, it doesn't matter. Create main window, that's promising. Yeah, let's go into create main window and see what's going on. So in the mouse down, we are seeing a staggering lack of comments. It would probably be helpful to add something here. We were talking through it at the time, but still. So mouse down is just saving a bunch of things. Save off where the mouse and window were when the button was pressed. All right, that's what we were doing. Nice. And then the mouse move is where if the mouse button is down, drag / resize the window. Neat. Comment in your code. Your future you will thank you. Okay, so we can see that the mouse move function is divided into two parts. Is the mouse over the border or other? If we're moving the window, then we try to move it and then we set it on screen. That's the thing that brings it back into view. But if we're resizing it, well, let's check. If we're over the left border, then we know how much we want to make small, and we need to adjust the left so it appears to be shrinking from the left, even though it's moving right at the same speed that you're shrinking it. So here's where we say don't let the window get too small, and here's where a typo cropped in. I do wish that Lua had a strict mode like Visual Basic has in some other languages, where it would tell you if you're using a thing you've never used before. So let's just set that height to 200. And oh, look, now we have a minimum height. That's great. Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and just take a snapshot of that little change right there, and we'll go ahead and update the the README file. Fixed minimum bug, so window can't get too short. Small vertically. We're living in the Netherlands right now, and we're getting back into playing board games now that we're vaccinated. And a lot of English rules for board games will assume sort of a fluency on the idea of row versus column. And it doesn't seem to come across in quite the same way when we're talking with friends here. And they're like, which one's row, this one or this one? It's this one. And so I'm trying to think about that when I'm writing these notes, is maybe vertically makes more sense than row and column, because row and column is completely arbitrary, right? Or at least it feels that way. Okay. So let's ignore the D-tracker changes. Let's ignore the 100 deadly decoy changes. Just look at the Opaque Quest Tracker. Now, this was a testing change I made the other day. I don't think we need to commit it, but we do need to commit a version bump. When we're working on a new version, we should start a new version. Okay, Opaque Quest Tracker, this is 102. Great. So I do want to go ahead and grab that change. I will call it the version bump for Opaque Quest Tracker. And we can double check that's the only change we're snapshotting. Exa says, don't think that arbitrary columns are meant to support weight vertically. Definitely, in English, that makes sense. Although, I don't know, my spreadsheets, most of the weight feels like it's going that way. Yeah, like as a mnemonic, column and row seems fine in English. I don't know if it translates across. Okay, so that is the version 1.0.2. That's to do changes. That's always fine to. And then we just want to come in here and fix this typo. And we're going to stage that, and let's keep working on the rest of this. So we'll go ahead and use that as the commit message as well. That's lovely. And push it on off. Okay, great. Let's come on back in to the code here. Now, we can see that there are some magic numbers here in the code. What do I mean by that? Those are numbers that are just here, and they don't have a name attached to them, so you have to guess from context what they mean. Are they the same? Should they be the same? What happens if I change 1 to 220? Is that good? Is that bad? And so it can be very useful to just go ahead and save those off somewhere. So for instance, we have a couple of their globals here. So what if we say opaque when min width equals 200? And same thing, opaque when min height equals 200, although I do like to have height come first. Okay, now each of those 200s, we can come back in and say, if the height is less than the min height, then height equals the min height. Now, is that longer? Yes. Is it more clear? I hope so. But is it easier to change later? That's the real key right there. Is I can come back later and say, oh, okay, someone wanted the minimum height to be bigger. Done. Right? A single character change instead of having to dig through and find every instance of 200 and hope that that was it and you didn't miss anything. That being said, all right, same thing here, opaque min width and width. Yeah, that's a nice little change right there. Let's go ahead and take a snapshot there. But I guess I should actually double check that that works. So. Okay, we're still seeing the dragging around behavior. That's okay. We'll come back to that. But minimal width, minimal height, they're no worse than they were. Now, we can test this actually if we come in and say that's 1 and that's 4. Okay, we can definitely get 4 times in one direction than we can in the other. Great. Okay, so we have the variables we hoisted out. No more magic numbers in here. Great. We move to some magic numbers. Now, that doesn't affect anyone out in the world. If you ship the plugin, I don't think it's worth an entry in the release notes. It's just an internal future-proofing, making sure future me doesn't make mistakes based on past me. That being said, now that we have these variables, like we should have had in the first place, we can use them in other places, like when we're fixing these numbers as they're coming in. So where were we? We were in here. In the fix missaved, I wonder if missaved should only have one S. It's probably fine. Okay, so if possible width is, what do we say? Greater than the opaque when min height. Well, here's the problem. Here's where I run into problems is I think in pixels, and the windowing system is using pixels. So the save file is in percentages, but everything after that is in pixels. So, and the reality is, if we're rescaling it, then it is already in pixels. So I think actually what we need to do here is that bigger than the opaque min width, and is this less than, I should say greater than or equals and less than or equals to the thing that we're checking. Okay, so if that number does look like pixels, it's bigger than the min, it's smaller than the size of the screen, then we'll just use it. So we don't even need to save that to a local at this point. We can just say that equals the width divided by that. Yeah. Now, am I worried about that being a decimal? I don't think so. I think the UI behaves pretty, or the Lua interface, excuse me, Lua interface seems to be okay with giving it weird things like a decimal number instead of an integer. Okay, so that being said, we are done with that maybe. Do we think that works? It might work. Let's find out. Let's actually give that a try. We're doing that on width. Oh, we can see already we have a mismatch between width and height. So let's fix that. Width, 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 width. Okay. And yet I use the example of height. That is just asking for trouble. Okay. I'll fix my example too. 447 divided by 1080 is more like 0.41. All right. Oh wait, no. Sorry. The 1920 was fine. Cool. That's more like 233. Okay, so let's give that a try. Let's come back in to the save file for Arta, my hunter here on Treebeard, and let's make sure the plugin is unloaded. Otherwise, any changes I make here are going to be overwritten when the plugin gets unloaded. All right, and finally, we had the example of width equals 447. So let's go ahead and load, and we can see that was not terrible. The height thing, I wonder if that was a holdover from, yeah, the change in mins and whatnot. Okay, let me go ahead and unload that, and we'll go ahead and redo the width. Let's actually do a width of 900 now. It'll be obviously half the width of the screen. Yes, okay. So that looks perfect. We've got 900 rescaling to 1920, so just under half the width of the screen. And if we come back in here, we get a width here. And if we multiply that, now my screen's actually more like 1904. There we go. We get basically 900. So So it looks like the logic is working here, and that's great. Now the other thing we can do is we could come back in and not do that fix. Comment that out, come back in, and let's just do 200 and see what happens. And boy, that does not seem to appear, and that's exactly what my friend was experiencing when she had the file that was just pixels like that. It just was not working. Where'd we go? Okay, let's uncomment that, load it back in, and perfect. We have something that is the minimum size of 200 pixels. Lovely. I thought this might be a little bit more frustrating, but this is working. Oh, thanks, Little Red Head. Moobot says, plugins. Yes, if you are not familiar, Lotro Plugin Compendium is great. Highly recommended. Okay, so we want to do that for width and height. In fact, let me move left and top on down here. We're not quite ready for that. And that's more of a function that will comment. And there we go. So we want to do all of this, but with height. Now, if one was cautious, one could just come in here, and every time one had the word width, one could type height. And this is great, but if you're me, you will often miss something. So be cautious. All right, so we're still looking for width. Awesome. And let's see, okay. Oops. Height. And that's the last one, he said optimistically. Okay, 343 divided by the 1080. So a reasonable percentage there is about a third. Excellent. Okay, so we have height, 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 and height. Let's give that a try. So, same thing. First of all, let's just make sure that the code itself doesn't blow up. Awesome. And now we can come back in, and for height, we'll just go ahead and we know the screen is around 1080, so if we go ahead and do 500, we should expect about half the height of the screen. Sweet. I do like it when a plan comes together. And then, oops, if we set the height to be more like 1,000, it is. Now, it's also mostly off the screen, but that's okay. That's not what we're working on right now. So we have something that works for height and width. Awesome. For left and top, though, can we do something similar? Let's see. What were we seeing before? We were seeing left, top, and these pixels. Yeah, those were just looking like normal pixels. I'm going to pull these out for examples. Whoops. So we have those examples to kind of craft our code around. Same thing, if settings.opaque win and left is greater than or equal to, well, 0? I mean, at this point, we have the width and the height, and we're just rescaling pixels, so we're not really looking for something sensible. On screen is going to get called later, I hope. Actually, let's check. Where is load settings? Create main window. Does that call on screen? Why am I not just searching for on screen? On screen is only getting called while we're moving the window. That is not correct. We want to call on screen after making the thing. So we have a mouse down, we have mouse up, we have mouse move. So we want to also call on screen just in general. And that might actually be part of the problem here, is that those numbers were so big that even if the window was being created, it was not being put onto the screen. In fact, let's check that. Let's come on in. Oh, hey, I wrote a bad code. Oh, yes, I was in the middle of a thought. Okay, here we go. So if I had this save file and I came on in here and I said, you know what, we want that, what if we want the width to be, well, we've already fixed the width. What if we want the left to be 1.5 times the width of the screen? Okay, that's what I want to see. I want to see it shoved up against the right there. If I hadn't, so left, let's fix that. If I hadn't done this fix here for the call to on screen, yes, okay, so that was another bug that I completely forgot about. Just as a general thing, it shouldn't be just after we're moving the window, it should be when rendering the window. In fact, that's so important, it needs to be its own commit. All right, on screen, stage. Is that worthy of a bug fix? Yes, I think it is. All right, fixed bug. So window saved off screen will be moved on screen. Onto screen. Awesome. So didn't even realize that was the bug, but it's just a one-line change, and we'll be happier for it. Okay. What next? Now that we know, because it should have been done anyway, that after the window is created, it's going to be moved on screen, that gives us a little freedom here to mess up. So if we think that the rescaling is appropriate and do it, and it turns out to be wrong, well, the window's just going to get moved back on screen anyway. So no biggie. Okay, so if that saved value of left is, let's see, if it's greater than 0, maybe if it's greater than 1, because if it's between 0 and 1, it's probably fine. So if it's greater than 1, and if it's less than, or, I mean, I kind of want to do the clever thing of saying, well, we need to deal with the width of it as well, but we don't. It's going to be handled. So, and it's less than or equal to the display width, then do the thing. So here we want to go ahead and try to rescale. And here we have that comment. And it's going to be 1473 divided by 1920. And I shouldn't say equal, it's going to be about 1473 divided by 1920. There we go. It's going to be about that. So, setting is that opaque win.left equals itself divided by the display width. Okay, before we go any further, we should probably test our assumptions here. So let's get this into a reasonably default position here and unload that and come back in to that save file and muck it up. So we want left to be, let's say 500. Not 500 times the width, in this case we just meant 500 pixels. Great, that's about 500 pixels from the left. And we can verify that by coming in and saying 1200. Fantastic. I am convinced that it's rescaling that left coordinate. Now we just want to do the same thing with how far from the top. And now, regardless of how the file got saved, pixels or percentages will reinterpret it reasonably. Now, if it was 0 pixels from the left, it's going to be seen as being percentages. But in this case, that's okay because they end up being the same. Okay, so I'm going to try to do it in place, the dangerous copy pasting. Okay, and we have our example here. For me, the algebra makes a lot more sense in my head if I have a working example, and which is why I kept those save files around. The broken save files that I was provided, I kept those because I knew they were broken in the specific way that I was looking for. And regenerating those just would have been a bit annoying. So don't undervalue the importance of good bad data. Okay, so we know that the value that was in the save file was about 1/4 of the way down my window. Let's give that a try. Let's unload, well, where is this thing? Okay, we'll position it mostly at the top here and unload it. And in the save file, we're going to say the top is actually about 600 pixels. I think that'll be very noticeable. Load it on in, and yes, 600 plus the height, 200, 800. That is very plausible right there. Well, with that, let's go back and check what we were trying to do. So if the value is greater than 1, try dividing by the current screen size, see if that's a reasonable size. Kind of. We did it the other way. We checked if the value in pixels was reasonable and then divided out. But yeah, that's good. Okay, seems like a minimum width, minimum height. We actually did that already. Let's go ahead and say fixed bug. So save files with pixels instead of percentages are loaded correctly. Neat. Okay, now we haven't done this yet, or maybe it's good already, and we can take a look at that. Let's see, when the same size can we size it? We'll check on that. And restore defaults, still a work in progress. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a snapshot before we go any further, because I do not want to redo the work we just did. So first of all, we have a description from the README. That's a great commit message. And let's go ahead and snapshot the README, snapshot the to-do file, and let's come back in. I don't actually need that apartment right now. I was playing around with it, I think I was actually helping the person in question, and I needed to be able to load it without unloading all the rest of my plugins at the time. But we're done with that. Okay, those comments, we'll come back to that, but fix. I still don't like that name. Naming things is hard. Fix missaved settings is really convert pixels to percentages. Convert saved pixels to percentages. I think that speaks a little bit better about what we're trying to do, because we're not fixing all missaved files, just files missaved in this very specific way. Okay. It may be that we'll have to fix a different save file someday. We'll make another function maybe. Okay, I feel better about that already. So we have convert saved pixels to percentages. Excellent. And we have the call to that function, and we're good to go. And we can go ahead and actually say added some comments to mouse functions. Those don't deserve a release notice, they're just, again, for us internally. Ignore the 100 of the decoy stuff, and push those to the cloud so that a local crash is not a problem. Excellent. Neat. Okay, so that's actually a lot of progress right now. We have a more robust loading system that will either handle percentages or pixels. Doesn't matter, even though it should never be pixels. I don't even know how the file got to that way, because all we're doing is, and that's something I should probably investigate, all we're doing when we save is calling save with the settings structure. I guess the real question is, at what point do we set this, and could it ever be set incorrectly? Well, let's find out. All right, no, that's right. I should be looking for equals. So here, width divided by screen width, width divided by display width. So only if the screen width were somehow incorrectly set to 1 would that be pixels instead. And that just doesn't seem very likely, because that's coming straight from Lord of the Rings Online. And what about here? Display width also coming in from Turbine UI display get size. So without those being somehow set to, oh, and that's my new code anyway. Let's not look at that. So without screen width being incorrectly 1, this should never just be pixels. But now even if it is, we'll be okay. Okay, let's go back to that to-do list. What other things did we think about? You know what? I had such a resounding mental yes to this idea of a restore defaults button. Let's go ahead and do that. So we already have a use current settings as default button. Let's assume restore to defaults is kind of a last ditch effort. It should probably be a bottom thing. We shouldn't stumble on it accidentally. Okay, so oops. I think we're done with that for right now. Where is the UI for the options created? Well, again, when I'm unfamiliar, I try to find that main function. That's a very handy way to collect together stuff. And here we have the draw options control. That sounds plausible. Okay, add a label for scroll bar, checkbox to lock the window, add a button to make the current settings the default settings, add a button to open a color picker. Great. I really feel like those are changing the color is a local thing. Okay, so I've seen this before. Color picker needs to request it be on top. That's just, I don't like that. I'm gonna get derailed here. Okay, so new number 1, and then we'll bump this one up. When opening, raise color picker to top of Z order. Now, the Z order for UI elements, Thoroler was mentioning this a time or two ago. Any of the UI elements that behave like you click it, it comes to the top, but stuff can be put above it. Those are Z order 0, and then the UI manager is just responsible for bringing stuff forward when you click on it. But I believe it's possible for Windows to request to be brought forward in that stack. So if I come in here to Window, let's see if I can find what I'm looking for. Well, there's Focus. Certainly Focus sounds plausible. Let's see. Let's see if there's anything else that looks more. Set enabled, set top, no. Set visible, no. Let's go ahead and start with Focus. See if that gives us what we want. So where is that going to happen? We can come back in to the Create Color Picker window. But maybe it's actually where we would make use of it. So we're in the options control, the color picker. Oh, right, I was going to also move color picker button before default button. Okay, so when the color change button is clicked, we want the color window set visible, but we also want the color picker window focus. Let's see if that does what we want it to do. So unload, load, options, change color. Sweet, look at that, it's on top. Now if I bring it over here, I go ahead and put that in back, change color. Oh well, it didn't bring it to the forward. Maybe I got too excited. Well, when you first do it, it works. What if I close it? I bring it back. Now it's in back. Well, that's quite the thing. How have I done this before? Now you could set the Z order. Color picker set Z order 1. I don't know if focus is doing what I want it to do. Now I don't necessarily want to change the Z order permanently, so I'm curious if you bump the Z order and then change it back, does that get you a result that's a little bit more consistent? Oh, hey. Well, that is doing what I want it to do. So the Z order isn't permanently changed, it can be covered up, but if I click the button, it is coming forward. Now, it'd be nice to have a sort of minimum set of what is needed here. I think we can say focus is not doing what I want it to do. So if I come over here, bring that, Focus is not sufficient here. That makes me sad. Is it necessary? Let's just set the Z order to 1, bringing it on top of all the standard UI elements, and then set it to 0, hopefully allowing it to coexist with standard elements. Although, let's just check the behavior. What does it look like when it's 1? Let's check my assumptions. Okay, we can see I'm clicking on the plugin manager, and yes, color picker is coincident with all the 1s, which is above all the 0s. Okay? So I don't want it to always be on top unless I do. Color picker, I mean, would you really want that to get covered up by anything? I don't know. But for now, we'll play better with the UI system and say, yes, other things can cover it up, but it will always jump back up to the top. I've got to ask, though, is there not a top that isn't about the... All right, I guess that's what we'll do for right now. I wonder what focus is meant to do and why it's not doing what I want it to do. But that's a question for another day. Okay, so sidetrack of sidetrack done, I think. Make sure the color picker window is on top. Okay. So we'll just commit that off. Fixed bug where color picker window isn't on top when you open it is, what's the real problem? Is hidden under other windows when you open it. Because for whatever reason, I decided it should be underneath the plugin manager. So of course it's going to be covered up. Unless you do something special like this. Okay. Now, that was that. We can go ahead and remove that to-do item, come back in, and excellent. Use that as the commit message, and we're going to go ahead and take a snapshot here. Okay. Now, my second sidetrack is it feels like setting the current settings as default is kind of a take local and move to global, kind of a meta operation. Changing the color, that belongs up with things like the opacity and whether or not the window is locked in place. In fact, probably between opacity and locking the window in place. Now, unfortunately, I did not set up the UI to be very flexible here. So this is a chance to take a look at that. What we really want is each one of these controls to be a certain number of pixels after the previous one. And so if I move one of them down, it'd be kind of nice if all of them moved down. Now, a way we can do that is just go ahead and use a variable, local control top equals something. Now, we know the first one, we want 10 pixels down, so that's great. So we can go say control top, and this is another way to remove some of those magic numbers. Okay, now we can also say that the next one was going to start 20 below that. So control top equals control top plus 20. And now this one is properly spaced. The next one was another 40 below that. So we can do the same thing. Control top equals control top plus 40. And while I'm doing this, local left margin equals 10. Get rid of some of those other set position magic numbers while we're at it. Okay. So control top, we've already seen. That brings us here. That was going to be 70 here. And the next one was going to be another 50 below that. So control top equals control top plus 50. Paste it in. And then the next one was another 30. Control top equals control top plus 30. Okay, ideally, if we have not messed anything up, this is just going to work. Now, when I'm doing UI changes like this, I will often bring up the snipping tool, or whatever your OS equivalent is of it, and I'm going to make a rectangular snip, and that gives me just the pixels of the window there. So if I unload and load, ideally, I'm going to get something that looks identical. Awesome. All that work and we got nothing out of it. But if I then come on in and say, you know what, I want less space between the opacity scroll bar and the checkbox to block windows, let's just say that's 20. Now we can unload, load, come back in, and everything moves up. So we can see there's still the same spacing between the lock window in place and the next two buttons, but they've all moved up. And that's where this is a lot more powerful, is now I can move things around and it won't just be one of them moving, it'll be all of them moving. Now, I've just made life a little bit harder for myself because I do want to reorder some of these, and that's going to maybe, will that be harder? Let's find out. Now that I say that, I'm doubting myself. Let's come on in and say, what were we trying to do? We wanted to, actually, do I want that? I don't actually want to move that down. Okay, so we were trying to swap the position of these two buttons. So what happens if I just drag that down, paste that in, and bring it back? Well, that didn't work at all, did it? But it didn't work in an exciting way. What happens is I forgot to do the control top equals to account for the height of this control, even though nothing's below it, to future-proof ourselves. So let's go ahead and fix that. Unload, reload, recheck options. Great. Let's try that one more time, but this time we're including that adjustment to the control top variable automatically. Let's come back in. Sweet, now we can see the change color and the use current settings as default have just swapped positions. That was incredibly simple to do. In fact, before we do that, let's go ahead and take a snapshot of the changes we made, and then we can take a snapshot of the swapping position, and we'll see just how little work we had to do for that. All right, replace, what are we calling this? Draw options control position magic numbers with logic. Now we'll just say we'll replace the magic numbers. Oh, thanks, Moobot. Yes, Gundabad, I hear good things. It's funny, isn't it? Exo says, couldn't you just simplify the positioning with a list box? I probably could. I don't actually have a lot of experience with list box. I saw you do some really cool things with the Auras plugin for the options with list to position things. I will circle back around to that in just a sec. I do want to commit this before I forget about it. So let me make sure this all looks good. It all looks lovely. Okay. Stop expanding that. Cool. So, tell me, Exo, because I don't have a lot of experience with list boxes, a thing I will sometimes do is use vertical spacing to separate elements out. So I actually do want to add more space before this as well. So we just do it as kind of a lump right here. Then if I move that around, it stays with it. Too much. Okay, so I wanted to move that down to separate it out, and probably this one gets moved up a little bit. So does a list box make everything equally spaced, or is there a way to add margins or empty items to kind of make extra padding where you want to visually separate things? And can't be bothered to draw like a visual box around it. Okay, oh yes, and Little Redhead points out the Brawler class is destined to be deployed tomorrow, which is quite exciting for people who like to brawl. Oh, the other thing I was going to do is say the lock window in place really feels like it should be switched with the color now that we've made that so easy. So let's go ahead and same thing. Let's just move the color above the lock and see what that looks like. I don't actually like how much space there is between the scroll bar. So we're going to go ahead and squish that down. And give some of that to the lock instead. Now, okay, Exo says each item you place in the list box is placed below the previous item. So it sounds like some of that evenly spaced stuff I saw in your options screenshot came out of being in a list box. Okay, neat. So I'm doing a lot more fiddly stuff here. It would probably be much easier to do in a list box and would probably look better, but this is just the kind of UI manipulation I'm used to. If I wanted to be really finicky about it, I would actually want more like a top margin and a bottom margin to kind of specify what's going on, because I'm being loosey-goosey with, is this extra space after the previous one or more space before this one? So if I were doing a really specific UI and I wanted to kind of protect myself against future changes, I might have left margin, right margin, top margin, bottom margin, and then the calculation for where the new one is a combination of the previous one's bottom margin and this one's top margin, and that's more than what we need right now. It really is. Okay, so reset, or I don't know, what is the right word for resetting the settings to default? I don't know, but I'm going to proceed as if I do. Add a button to reset the settings. Revert settings to default, suggests Little Redhead. Lovely. So I'm going to say local revert settings button equals turbine.ui.lotro.button. And again, this is a Lotro themed button. And then in this button, the first thing we always want to do is parent it so that it will be drawn. Set parent to just the options window is fine. And then revert settings. We're going to go ahead and set the text to, and because this is a localized plugin, we're going to go ahead and use the lang global variable options and revert. And now we just have to make that thing something that exists. So revert equals that. And in English, we'll use Little Redhead's excellent suggestion, revert settings to default. Okay, a couple other things we want to do. We'll set the position. And we're making use of those variables again. Control top was 30. That sounds fine. And then set the width. This is probably going to need to be as wide as the previous one. That's a lot of words. So revert. And then we need a click function, but I'm not ready to actually write it now. So let's just make sure we know it's happening. So turbine.shell.writeLine, and we can just write out to the chat window, to the standard output. Clicked. Awesome. And let's go ahead and include that control top equals, just in case we add more stuff later. Okay, well that was less than I was expecting to see when I reloaded the plugin. All right, so we have set the position to left margin and control top. Control top is the previous one plus 30. Why am I not seeing this? What have I changed? Well, stuff was moved around. I forgot to take a snapshot, I'll tell you that. Let's go ahead and rip that out for a moment. So we're going to go ahead and stage that, and stage that, and stage that. And that is the color change button. Let's go ahead and move color button up. Rearranged some spacing. Okay, that'll make it a little bit easier to tell what's different here. But let's go ahead and confirm that's what this looks like. Ah, another typo. Again. Please give me a strict option. That's not a thing that exists. We're misparenting it. Okay, so revert settings to default. Lovely. Now, we click it, we get the message clicked. Excellent, everything's hooked up there. Okay, when in doubt, if you have a text editor that will highlight like things, like Sublime Text is doing right now, highly recommended, because I can double click options and see it being used. And if I had bothered to double click options, I would have seen it's not being used here. And likewise, when I double click that, nothing else shows up. So I was not taking full advantage of the tools available to me, I'm afraid. That being said, let's go ahead. And we have a function called save settings as default. Let's add a function called revert settings. Now, with that, we can go ahead and call it revert settings. And then we can come in, I don't need that expanded right now, or that, or any of that. Excellent. So we have a default settings structure. One thing that I have been a little hand-wavy on is sorry, I'm doing two things at once here. Okay. One thing that I did was avoided the idea of a deep copy, which is to say, when you say this table equals that table, we're not really duplicating everything in that table. We're just pointing at the previous table. And so in load settings, when we say settings equals default settings, I'm a little worried that we no longer have those default settings to play with. So how do we figure that out? Well, let's go ahead and do two things. We're going to steal a function called dump, which is a great way to look at a table, from the deep tracker. It's got some general functions borrowed from others in the community or from the Lua reference books. And we're going to go ahead and add that into the general functions or helper functions here. Basic debug function. Because what I want to do is I want to go ahead and dump. Does that return a string? Yes, it does. Okay. So I want to do turbine.shell.writeLine, and I want to say default settings, and I will concatenate that with the dump of default settings. Let's take a look at what that produces. He said, not putting it in a place that will execute. All right. So when we dump out the table, we don't get any fancy formatting. We just get lots of curly braces, names of keys and values, which are more decimal values. Excellent. So it's everything we would expect to see. Now, if I do not have a save file, so let's come on in here. Let's get rid of that save file, and I need to, I need to go ahead and delete this file, or in this case, I don't like deleting files that are working. I'm just going to rename it, and it won't be there. Oops, done with that snip. Let's come back in, and let's put that here, and when we click the revert button, let's see if they've changed. Perfect. Okay, so load back in. We do see the same default out there. So let's go ahead and make some changes here. Excellent. And let's go ahead and options revert. And just take a look. And we can see the default settings have indeed changed. When we said settings equals default settings, we were just assigning a pointer from one to the other. We were not making a deep copy of that. Now, there are functions out there that are capable of doing that. For instance, if I were to come into the D tracker, it uses a function deep copy, says it returns a deep copy of a given table. Now, digging into how this works and why this works can be a fun exercise, but essentially it will recurse into an object with primitives and copy them over, and if there are tables, it will recursively deep copy those tables. Or at least that's what I would expect based on the name. Now, what I'm not seeing is all of that. Oh, no, there we go. So we have local copy. It's getting called inside of there. Awesome. Now, there's a lot of stuff with Lua tables that it's doing here that I don't necessarily know enough to feel comfortable to say what is it doing, but I do know the function works. So if we come in here, come back into helper functions and make deep copy available to the Opaque Quest Tracker, we can remember it's just called deep copy and then you pass it whatever. If we come in here to the load settings and we say deep copy of default settings. All right, so we unload, we go ahead and delete that plugin data file. We load, we see the default settings are back to our height equals 0.35, all of that. Change this around and hit this revert button. What we can see is the default settings have no longer been reused during the lifetime of this. Instead of settings pointing at default settings and changing those default settings, now we have copied that over, so settings has its own table to play with, and default settings is untouched, which is great. It means we can actually do this exact thing again. So in our revert settings, we can go ahead and say settings equals deep copy default settings. Now, is that enough? No, because we still need to move the window according to that, but it's a start. And if we come back into to our source control, we can see we added deep copy here. We're still working on the revert button. Excellent. And we have the new dump and deep copy helper functions. Okay, so what's the other thing we need to do? We need the UI to respond to this. Now the UI already does respond to this in one place, the create main window. But if we spin off a function, set window size position, perhaps, then we can go ahead and make use of the same stuff we're doing in create main window. Set position, set size. Do we need any of the rest of this? Well, that's mouse move. Let's shrink that down. That's mouse down. Okay, so what if instead we say set window size position, and same thing, we can now call this during window creation and during window reversion. Settings have been reset. Set window size position. Set is, and yeah, that's kind of right. Update, refresh, make use of window size position, whatever. Let's call it set and be and think about that. Think about what we've done. Okay, so that being said, let's take a look and see what we have. We have a revert settings to default. If we click it, we get that set back there. If we unload and reload, it is there. Oops. If we go ahead and delete those data files, they'll be recreated when we unload. Delete them again. Great. Load, it's in that place. Revert, it's back in that place. If I click it while it's there, nothing apparently happens, but we are doing all of that logic of recopy open, recopy the settings, reload them into the UI. But cool, okay. So we have the minimum changes needed for a reversion button. Let's go ahead and add helper function, dump functions, dump and deep copy. Now, I don't need to keep the dump function in there, but it is occasionally useful, pretty lightweight, and you'll see it everywhere because it's so useful. Okay, and then the other thing is reversion. Added setting reversion button. Now that's important enough that it needs to go into the release file. So, added option button to revert settings to default. Now, in this case, even if we hadn't done all the other changes today to fix corrupted save file issues, that button means it doesn't matter. If someone's having a problem, they don't see the window anywhere, they could just hit this button and start from scratch, reposition the window, everything's fine. So I think that's an important button to have when you have UI elements that can go wonky just from a corrupted save file. Because ultimately I was a little too clever, right? The save file was corrupted, and if I told them to just delete the save file, then the plugin goes to the other save file, which is the default for everything, which was also corrupted. And so it would copy those corrupted values into the new save file, which is also not corrupted. It was a mess. So this button, excellent. So we're going to go ahead and use that as the commit message. We're going to go ahead and double check. Okay, that's the name of it. That's the deep copy that we need. Now we have a way to revert the settings. We have a function to do this. And we have a button to make it all go. Lovely. Oh, I guess I could update the to-do file. There we go. Awesome. Well, I'm going to take a little pause there because I am curious about the list box that EXO was talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and, using the Lotro plugin compendium, look up the Auras plugin, currently on version 0.6.5. Auras is a plugin that aims to drastically improve the visual clarity of various classes, proc effects, resources, and cooldowns. Currently supports Captain, Guardian, Hunter, Champion, Runekeeper, and Brawler. Ambitious. Now, the description is cutting off here, but there's a view button, so I can just pop that open and view it. And now, all right, Exozeds and Bjorning. Awesome. Welcome to the Auras plugin. Ooh, snazzy icon. Okay. 3 key features. The proc bar, which can be configured to display the tier/cooldown of any active effect. The skill bar, which displays the various skills and their cooldowns. And the class-specific resource bar. No love for the minstrels, huh? Which can store a variety of things ranging from specialized buff timers to class-specific resources such as metal, fervor, or focus. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add it. Lotro plugin compendium has installed it. We'll go ahead and close that out. And let's refresh the list of plugins. Auras. Nice. All right. Nice, and you've got that description in here as well. That's nice and redundant. Let's see. Auras are created. It can be moved with whatever shortcut you use to unlock the vanilla UI. Way to cover the bases there. EXO says, forgot to update the description with that patch. Obligatory. It's still basically in beta comment. Absolutely. I am not critiquing all the nitty gritty here. I was just curious to see where it's at. All right. So settings are saved. If you wish to import settings from one character to another, simply locate these files. Oops, sorry. An alarm going off over there. And copy to the second character. Nice. Skill bar proc options are saved on a per spec basis. Each spec can have its own tailored configuration. Neat. Okay, so you're able to detect the current spec. That is neat. Cool. Well, let's take a look. All right, so for mine, I hit Control /, and it looks like, looks like you're using the drag bars library. Nice. And what do we have here? I'm a hunter, so I must have a focus. Excellent. You're incorporating the hunter focus there. I don't have much to attack, mind you, but all right. For some reason, very few opponents here outside the prancing pony. What are you gonna do? Nice. You've got the ticking down numbers and the radial cooldown going. All right, Axel says, nope, wound up creating your own version because installing dependencies is, people might struggle. You know, that's fair. And yes, the custom fonts that you were talking about. So for each time, instead of just doing a set text, you're doing a set image with the appropriate value. Nice. All right, and that's nicely centrally located. Oh, and things are disabling as the focus is going down. Neat. Well, feel free to incorporate any of the logic for the Hunter Deadly Decoy, but I could imagine them going side by side very nicely. Okay, that's fun. I like the look of it. I'm going to have to play with that. Though my primary is a minstrel, so I wouldn't have use for that right now, it sounds like. Okay, neat. So the other thing I wanted to look at was the options that EXO was talking about. So let's come back into options. I'm going to make it bigger because that's my focus here. All right, our settings, display skill bars are with, oh cool. So if I went like 900, save. Where? All right, well there's a thing for you. It didn't, the width of the drag bar only updated after I clicked and drag it. Okay, so these are the list boxes, I think. Oh, these are the tree boxes for controls. Okay, nice. And that's neat. I like the visual look of the configuration here. It's very tidy. I like the collapsible nature of it. Let's see. Those are the trees, but the trees are inside this boxes. Okay. That's neat. I like the border. I need to use more borders for UI separations. I just have not really delved into it very much. So I really like what you're doing here with both the border around the header and the border around the contents. And I think it looks really nice too. Although, is it partially transparent? Am I seeing stuff underneath it? I'm probably just seeing stuff underneath it. Okay, yeah. Fun. Okay, yeah, I like what I'm seeing. Oh yeah, there's transparency. Well, sweet. I look forward to seeing what more you do with that. Okay. That there is the list box. Nice. Okay, so we have a few more minutes today. Let's see if we can do something about these or if it's already there. So, in the Opaque Quest Tracker, the next question was, is it possible for this to be even bigger than the window? What would that look like? Let's come back into the save file. And that's going to look like, oh, fun, Aura settings. All right, I got to see your settings file. Nice. Okay. Sorry. Exo says, it automatically arranges the vertical element, although it does not try to center horizontally. So you kind of end up wrapping each line in its own container. Okay. Okay, so if we have a height that is 1.1 and a width of 1.1, what does that mean for us? I think it means not good things. Oh, well that's interesting. But why is it that? Oops. Okay, well, okay, let's do the height of 1.2, the width of, again, 1.5. Oh, well, it didn't have a close quote. Let's see. Okay. Well, I don't know what I did before, but this is what I was thinking, was if you just really wanted to bring down the visual, like just dim everything, that would certainly do it. I'm not sure why this would be useful. But yes, this is a hide and seek lotro right here. Weird. Just imagine if you just forgot that was on with 10% opacity. Sunglasses mode. Yes, Exa. Oh, I do have that behind my face. I'm just dragging the opacity bar. Now, it's not on top of all the UI elements, of course, but now it is. Hey, it's night out. You can see the moon. Tick, tick, ticking away. Okay, but now that it is that big, what can we do about it? Can we resize it easily? Well, I locked the window. Okay, unlock the window. I'm not clicking and drag. Oh, we got something. I think this is a case where the reset button would be handy. Okay, I'm not prepared to, could be violently tinted pink. Yes, that is true. Hang on. All right, so we load that sucker. We go to the change color. There we go. Disable post-processing, disable post-processing. That's a little much. Okay, so revert settings, bam. Oh, that's interesting. Revert settings didn't update the opacity. All right, we found a bug. Neat. So with the create main window, where do we do opacity? I'm not sure. Okay, update window back color. Nice. There's a function for that. Create main window. Great. All right. Thank you, Exo, for helping me find that bug. Hey, Thurlore. Thurlore has popped into the Lotro stream channel foolishly believing that Twitch was all right this week. Due to Twitch shenanigans, I am streaming on personal channel and then hosting over on Lotro stream. Exo, we have been turning off bug fixes apparently. So Exo just helped me realize that the reset, revert to settings button was not taking into account the color. So if we come in here now, hit revert settings, now that's being taken care of. Excellent. Oh, thanks, Little Redhead. Okay, whoops. We have a revert button. I'm not convinced that I need to be all dictator-like and say, you can't have this cover the entire screen. I don't know for what purpose someone would want that. Thriller, you call that a color picker? I don't. I call that an easy library to integrate, but it does have its drawbacks. But I needed a color picker one day, and that was one of the ones available on Loader Interface. There are several, and that was like the easiest one to integrate, I thought. I'm not prepared to dictate, so I've changed my mind. In this to-do, the window shouldn't get bigger than the monitor, whatever. I guess maybe we should constrain it to the actual dimensions of the monitor. Maybe? I mean, what's the benefit of that? I don't know. But if we were going to do that, let's just spec out what's going to be. Here in the loading, we have a convert saved pixels to percentages, where if it was saved as a 300, we say, oh, that was probably pixels converted to percentages. Cool, we're good. So we can say load the files either way. But now once we've done that, what if we still have a value that's bigger than 1, bigger than the screen? Oh, I think it'd be reasonable to say go ahead and constrain to the size of the screen. Probably. I guess the real question is: Are people like going from really small to really big? And if they are, what's the expectation? Like if it's sort of as percentages, it's already fine. So I think you can't get in the state naturally. It's fine. We'll fix it. So constrain constrain size to display size. Cool, we'll just call it that. Naming things is hard. And in this function, I think it's actually going to be really straightforward. We just want the settings width and height. Okay, so if that is greater than 1, then that equals 1. End. I don't think it needs to be anything more complicated than that for now. And then let's go ahead and give that a try. Let's see what that does. Now we want to unload so we can go ahead and manipulate the save file here. And height, we're going to go ahead and say 135%. And width, we're going to save 125%. Load that up and unload it. Cool, and we can see height and width are now 100% of the screen. So at the very least, we can come in, and if it is not locked, we should be able to, yes, we have the left boundary and the top boundary. Because they're not bigger than the screen, we can get them there. What about over here? Yeah, we can get that, and we can get that. Okay, I think that's a pretty reasonable way to go. So what does that look like? In our snapshot, we can see we added a function, we called it, and oh, we fixed that. So let's go ahead and revert color to when revert button is pressed. Now that's a bug fix for a feature I just made. It doesn't need to go in the release file. But here, I think that's worth pointing out our good work in the README. So fixed bug, so window can't get bigger, so window won't be bigger than display. I mean, that's a pretty low bar, but good enough. All right, and then, oh no, that's the 100 of the decoy. We're not dealing with that today. Okay, so that was that. And we confirmed that if it does hit the edge of the screen, we can drag it around. Nice. Okay, so that, and that. Lovely. Take a snapshot. The final thing that that I called out at the beginning was in the to-do file, that as we were trying other things, I noticed that as we're shrinking this, the way shrinking a window works, if you're manually implementing it in a window instead of using a Lotra window, is that you're changing the width and changing where the left of the window is, and it creates the optical illusion that you're just shrinking it from the left. In reality, you are shrinking it from the right and moving it the same number of pixels. And that becomes very obvious when we hit the minimum width and we keep sliding on over. So I thought it might be nice to catch that particular corner case because it just looks a little weird. And we've already seen in the, no, I don't want to be in there. Thurler says, meh. It just seems a little wonky. But in the window mouse move function, we have some checks here. So we have some checks that say don't let the window get too small. If the window is getting too small, then let's see, we're changing the width, awesome. We're using that for the width, but what's happening with left and right? There we go. We want to make sure that left is being updated as well, and top in this case. So if we did something like width equals that, left equals, and in here, top equals, then we can go ahead and stop moving them both. What does that mean? So right here, it knows, it remembers how far we were from the starting point because we can see it stops moving if we start expanding to the left instead of to the right. So we have the information about where we started. Mentally trying to walk through this, and I think I need to make some notes on the screen. All right, what do we have? What is left? What is top? Left, we'll start with the left, because that's what I noticed first. So left is window left minus the delta. And, okay, so we're setting delta, and then we're adjusting the left. And that's all we do. Okay, I'm going to be a little lazy and just say, we're going to say window left. Because I just want to see what that looks like. I think it's 100% wrong, but I want to see how it's wrong. Oh, that's delightful. That's funny. But it does do the behavior of not moving anymore, but then it starts moving. Okay, sweet. Could just block movement if width is less than minimum. Well, but that's true. So that's an interesting suggestion, EXO. Let's see. Width is being calculated based off of delta width. That's why. That's why I'm not checking up here. Thurlow says, this is the kind of stuff where you fiddle with it for an hour and at the end you get it working but don't understand exactly how it's working. This is the kind of stuff where I would actually probably just grab a piece of paper and start drawing coordinate systems and giving some sample numbers. So we did this before, we had some sample numbers. Let's go ahead and draw a couple of sample numbers. So what do we have here? We have mouse down, we have the current position, and we have the Windows position at the time of mousing down. Let's see. That's an interesting idea though, because we do the set position. What if we didn't call set position? Whoops. Do not move equals true. Why do I keep hitting page up? That's not good. Do not move equals true. And then if not, do not move, then. All right, let's give Exo's thought a try of just saying just don't move stuff. Oh, that's neat. All right. Now we're doing. It's imprecise if you're moving, if your mouse is moving fast. If you get a pixel jump, it's not the most correct. But it's not terrible. It's certainly better than it was. Oh, that's funny. I'm not convinced that's better. It's different. Thriller, I am not going to be here too much longer either. Okay, I think, but thanks for popping on. I think that is something that will take a little bit more effort than, or a little bit more time and attention than I have for tonight. So I think that's going to stay on the to-do file. So we'll say that this is for 1.1.3, and we'll call that a bug fix, so it gets a little bit higher attention. Okay. Okay, we have a reset size position. We actually did that. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and start cleaning up there. So we have some to-do file fixes. That's fine. All right, I don't think any of that was useful, so I'm going to throw it away. I'm going to ask the source control to just revert to the last change. Discard the changes. And now they're just not there anymore. So if I load this, we're back to where we were 10, 15 minutes ago. So to do updates. But I think this is a fine set of changes to go ahead and push out. That way, if anyone else has problems like our friend did, there's a reset button. It should load files that were corrupted automatically. Everything will be a little bit better. So how do we do that? Let's do a quick release. Now, there's a couple ways to do it, but if we come on down to plugins, Cube plugins, it's me. Oh, Excel plugins, there we go, nice. And then we come into the Opaque Quest. Well, we'll start here. So, and the other one is I have a folder for plugin along releases, and we're going to go ahead and Opaque Quest Tracker will duplicate that one down here for 1.0.2. Now, that's Cube plugins in there. And so I'm going to go ahead and use a program called Beyond Compare to compare what it is currently and what it was, just to refresh my mind, make sure everything that's in there is supposed to be in there. The version bump, lovely. And then stuff in here. We have the helper functions. We added dump, we added deep copy. Excellent. I want to go ahead and include those white spaces, otherwise that's going to be messy. And opaque. Oh, let's come into the README file. We have all those changes to the README file. Awesome. Opaque Quest Tracker. We have variables instead of magic numbers. We have a new string. We have two fix them up functions that we're calling. We're using deep copy now. We have the revert settings. We have a function to move the window around that we call from the creation and from the reversion. Excellent. We have a couple of comments that we added. we go ahead and use those variables instead of magic numbers. Awesome. Make sure we're on screen. Lovely bug fix. Getting away from magic numbers. Awesome. That all looks great. Nothing slipped in from that cursory glance that shouldn't be there. Cool. And I don't like shipping the to-do file, so don't need that. Excellent. So now that we have that, we want to go ahead and make a zip file. Now, the zip file can just be the name of the plugin and the version. That's fine. But you do want to make sure in the zip file, you have the directory structure starting with the developer name. So in this case, Cube Plugins goes in there. You don't want it to also have that Opaque Quest Tracker. It will just mess things up. You want it to be Cube Plugins. And then within that, we have the plugin file and everything else. Okay. Now the other thing is we can come on in and in plugins, Cube Plugins, Opaque website, we can go ahead and prepare for Lotro interface description. So come on into here, go ahead and make any changes we want here. Let's see, do we have 1.0 anywhere? All right, yes. So we can say 10.12 version 1.0.2 various bug fixes. Oh, that's a good question. What else did we do? Fix bug, fix bug, fix bug. Related, fixed various UI bugs. Lovely. Exo says, right, changelog. Should probably put that on the description rather than in the Discord. So, imitating others that come before me, such as Thorlor, I have started doing a kind of minimized version on the Lotro interface page. The full one's in the README file, and I'll probably spell it out in full when I put it up on the Lotro forums, assuming I get to that. But here, it just a touch of what's the point of downloading the uploaded version, right? Why should I do this? What am I going to get? And so I started out just having nothing, just like see the release notes here. But anytime you ask people to click, some percentage of them are just not going to bother. And if they don't have their answer here on this page, they just won't. And so just helping those people out, here's what's going on in that version. And it helps me out too, because this high-level summary is something that is very easy for me to produce right now. And in 6 months, I would have to read through every entry and be like, okay, what's going on here? So it's a favor to future me, who I hope I will like and would like to help. Okay. Anything else look weird? Okay. You can change the current settings in the options screen. Let's go ahead and make that a whole list. And this is a bulleted list, so we're using an asterisk there. You can change the background color using the color picker. Option screen, you can, that'll make it a little bit better. Lock the window once in the correct location size. Save the current settings as the default for new characters. Revert the current settings if the window is not visible for any reason. Neat. And then we just need to remember to end that list. Great. Okay. I think that's fine. Future me deserves what's coming from him, says Exo. Oh, I don't know. I hope future you deserves the best. Little Redhead says, I'm one of those people who won't getting around to clicking the README. And that's fair. Like, the README is for people who really want to know what's going on here. Like, when Titan Bar got taken over by Duriel, was that the name? I was really interested in some of the changes. So I dug in to that as a preparation for digging into the code. So for me, the README is a primer for what changes am I going to see if I do a line-by-line comparison of the code. It's not going to explain everything, but it's going to give me a heads up of, oh, this is probably that, and this is probably this. So it's a map, and it's a map for me as much as anyone else. Okay, so we have an interface. Awesome. Let's do a quick upload, and we'll call it a night. It's a night. So when I go to Lotro interface, oh, hey, my favorites, 2 updated. Well, that's cool. Auras and sequence bars, right? I saw Thorolor's announcement on that. Nice. Okay. So you can do an upload and update from the home page. That is underneath my face here. So I saw the updated 2 here. I just had to take a look. We can go ahead and upload and update. So this is going to be an update to the Opaque Quest Tracker. And here we're going to go ahead and do 1.0.2. We're going to replace with, let's give it this folder, and Opaque Quest Tracker 102. Lovely. Now here's where we need that markup. We've already got it saved for archive purposes. And I don't need to delete any old ones. I like keeping them around for a little while. Images. Oh, the options. The options have changed enough. I think it's worth doing a new snip. So, like I just hinted, I'm going to pull up the snipping tool, and I'm going to go ahead and do in rectangular mode a new snip and just draw that, which unfortunately you can't see until it's done. But I will go ahead and save that in Opaque Quest Tracker website, and then we have options version 102. And again, I really like that because as you go through the historical record, you can be like, oh, that's what it used to, that's what it used to look like, and you don't have to worry about archive.org or trying to go back to some old cached entry. You always have those in your archive. That being said, let's go ahead and refind. Oh, there we go. We can manage our images. Oh, we also have descriptions. All right. Let's see, image captions. Let's go ahead and open that up. We're updating this, so probably wouldn't it be nice to remember what this looked like while I'm captioning it? There we go. All right, the opacity, color, lock status of the window, and lock status of the window can be adjusted. The current settings can be used as the default. The settings can be reverted to. I'm using default twice there. That's going to get me into trouble because revert settings to default. Which default? The user's default or the plugin default? All right, that's a problem for future me. But if I come in here to do distinguish between players default and plugins default. All right, problem for future me. Take that. The settings can be routed to plugin default. All right, well, at least call it out here. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go ahead and, okay, in theory, can I replace it here? No. All right, we'll just remove that. And choose the file. And we'll upload it from here. And the caption, well, we have this caption, and we upload. Literally, it says, if a plugin says default, I think factory settings. Absolutely, and that's why I wrote it that way, but I was just looking at the previous button, which says use current settings as default, which is imprecise, let's say. We should have been default for account, but that gets terribly long. I don't really want a button that's 400 pixels wide. So that's okay. That's like I said, that's a problem for tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and close this window and be paranoid. Manage images. Looks great. Okay. Allow updates and add-ons. Yes, I love this community. More changes. And then update. Okay, so the standard confirmation stream we have between 0 and the heat death of the universe before we will see that updated. But if I do come to my list, my interfaces, I can see the Opaque Quest Tracker is pending. Lovely. So it says, can't believe nobody has come along and done all the localization work for me. So just to double check, for me, localization is the process of pulling out all the strings and making, putting them in one place, making them easily translatable. And then there's the translations where someone comes along and actually does the work. Localization is an important thing for a plugin developer to do. Translations are a gift from the community if people think it's a good idea, but oh, you haven't done either of those things. Well, last week, I think, we went through and hoisted out one of the things that have crept in the week before, because sometimes they do. But a few weeks ago, it was just the first part of the stream was just, okay, we have all these strings, let's go through the process of hoisting them out and localizing. And it's not terrible, right? You can do them one at a time, you can test as it goes, but there's a process. And if you have a couple of helper files, or a couple of helper functions to do the actual lookup, you just have the array. Oh, Baz. Oh, welcome, Baz. Baz says, I agree, localization is super important. I cannot imagine not adding them to the plugins. Yeah, that being said, if you're still doing major development on the plugin, I totally understand waiting, because doing the effort of localization on something that might be deleted tomorrow or moved to that other one, or everything changes, it can be a little disheartening. And so you want to have a certain stability for your version 1 release before you go through that effort. Maybe. I mean, it certainly feels that way sometimes. We're just like, I have so much to do, let me just wait, and when things are more stable, we'll just do it all in one go. Okay, all that being said, it looks like Opaque Quest Tracker is updated. Awesome. And we can see the updated image. And I don't know for sure if those were the same image numbers as before, but I assume not. And neat. Apparently this thing has been downloaded almost 2,000 times, which is mind-boggling to me because I have good eyes and I just never even thought that this was a thing that would be useful. But I'm super glad almost 2,000 people have at least downloaded it as a curiosity. Russian Prime plugin win? I don't recognize that reference. Okay, so I think we're gonna wind it down here as we have done all the things I set out to do of fixing file loading bugs in the Opaque Quest Tracker. Oh, Baz says you were suddenly hiding on your own channel. So Twitch had an issue earlier this week that caused it to revoke all the stream keys for everyone, and in response to that issue. And right now the Lotra community manager is on vacation, so we're just streaming from personal and hosting over on the official Lotra stream because it was that or not stream, and I like streaming. I like fixing plugins. So here we are. That says, yeah, the leak, yeah, that. So this has been lovely. We got a lot of fixes, but I think this is an important, something I wasn't really thinking of was all the values are stored as percentages. I didn't even think about what would happen if pixels leaked into the file and we got 300 pixels instead of 300%. And so, or really it would be treated as 3000% because of the way we're scaling things up. So this was a nice exercise, and I think any future time that I'm saving percentages instead of pixels to a file, I'll have to think, do I want to add in this little extra check that just in case it is pixels in the file, we don't blow up and create windows that are gigabytes of pixels wide or big. So this was a fun exercise. I'm glad we got a chance to do this. Okay, let's have any final questions or comments come into chat here while I grab a drink. And then we'll probably call it an evening because it is dark here already and it's getting close to my bedtime. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't see any last minute questions, comments, or concerns about what we've been doing here. I do want to thank you all for following me over to this personal channel. It does not get a lot of views given that I'm doing most of my streaming over on the Lotro Stream official channel. So it is nice to actually get a chance to use it for a time and make sure it actually works. And maybe it'll even be a channel down, a video down for replay later on. Neat. All right. Well, I think that's all we're going to cover today. So thank you all for joining me on this exploration of Lotro plugins. I do hope to see you all next week at the new time, 2 p.m. Eastern. But back on the official Lotro Stream channel, I do hope. But either way, until next week, keep plugging along. Bye-bye now.